So right now, what I'm going to do is welcome you again and say that I'm very pleased to be here. It's a real pleasure to do this, and I really appreciate the people who've come back. It's very helpful, and it's also a great incentive to bring new material all the time. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about today is how to accommodate you and find out what you really want to get out of the workshop too. So when I ask the question, I really would appreciate it if you came forward and told me how I can help you too. That's very valuable to me. So I think when I put this together, one of the key objectives was to help people understand what it takes to win an IFI proposal. So just quickly, how many people have won one? All right, congratulations. See, so within the room we have resources for you people to talk to these other people who won. So they represent a winning team. Now, also, what I'm going to do is, practically speaking, take you through how to put this proposal together. So we're going to pull out the actual forms, and we're going to go through them. We're going to speak about standard practices and other things that you have to understand. And you heard about that yesterday, and more importantly, how you will be evaluated. So a lot of people prepare proposals, and then they go, oh, I like the way this looks. I like my charts. It's really pretty. But that's not really important, okay? What's important is the amount of points you're going to get for the sections. And that's what we're going to talk about, is the value. Now, each one has, you'll find out, different value. So we talk a lot about best practices, and you heard some of the speakers speak about this. So really, you have to focus on your strength and where you fit. So once I get going, I'm going to stop the workshop, and I'm just going to quickly go around the room and ask people to introduce the sector they're involved in. And because we heard about the 14 practices yesterday at the World Bank, so where do you fit in those practices? And generally speaking, all of the banks have similar kind of sectoral compartmentalization. So back in the day, we used to organize things around geographic targets. I was at one time the manager for Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. And so everything that fell in that geographic region was lobbed at me. It didn't matter what the sector was. So I had to be a specialist in everything and nothing at the same time. So you have to identify where your priority countries are. So how do you get involved in these places? Well, if you haven't worked in a country, then you need to work with someone who has worked in that country. You can't go from a dead stop to competing on the world stage against other people who do have experience in that location. It's just structurally very difficult, and maybe it's like winning the lotto, if you could equate it with that. You might win the lotto. It could happen. How many people have won the lotto in this room? I wonder whether they would be in this room if they won the lotto. So I wouldn't. So you have to read all of the IFI strategies, and it should say for the country, not your country. So how many people here have worked on a CETA/DFAT/global affairs project? Okay, so about half the people have experience in projects which are financed in this country. Like, this is traditionally how firms grow into the global IFI market. They work on things in their own country, financed by their own country. They build up a sector expertise in the target areas, and then they jump into the IFI projects by building strategic links with other firms. And typically speaking, it's not like a hugely valuable thing to partner with other Canadians to bid on a project in India, for example, unless you're putting together a consortium to bid with other firms in India. It's great. It is great value since firms are, as you'll see, shortlisted by country. So just to give an example of this, I'm going to pass around one of the models. and it shows the people who are shortlisted by the country. So there's great value in being Canadian. Be proud to be Canadian. Do not be modest about being Canadian. It's one of the things about us that people love, but it's one of the things about us that hurts us. So you have to be a proud Canadian, which we all are, but also a Canadian who wants to compete needs to go, we have the best products. We have the best services. And combined with our partners, we have the greatest products and services that you want to pick us to win. And we have now provided you with evidence of this greatness in the form of our proposal. And then you want them to say, I really like that chart. So where are the projects in the pipeline? Not just the operational projects. As you heard about procurement strategies yesterday, focus on the project, the procurement strategy, the components in the project pipeline. Now, we've just heard from Raymond that, and I will be going home to prepare a can export application since I do not have one, since it just started on January 5th, so technically possible within the timeline of execution. I don't think anyone in this room would have one. You have one? So we have our own expert. We have a resource in the room on how to get a can export project right there. Thank you. That's very valuable because, I mean, if you don't have a placement in a market, you have something that no one else has, actually. You're like a pathfinder. And we need pathfinders. So when we see pathfinders, we need to harness that. Do you see how quickly I jump? I can have a one-on-one with you later on, okay? So you have to get ready to bid, and anything that can help your bid, like that will help you get into that market. And even if you don't have a position in that market, you can now go to the project implementation unit, visit them, say you're interested in the project, find out who's working on it, use the can export project to market position. Now you're ready to bid. So get ready to bid. This is part of getting ready to bid. The Canadian support mechanisms and the Canadian support network is one of the things which is greatly undervalued. That's why we need to speak more of it in almost and every conversation with that, the Canadian support network. Other countries have a support network which puts us to shame because we don't push for it. In our modest way, we don't expect much. We've been raised to be thankful, but not expect very much. Well, I want what the British and the Germans and the French want, by the way, because they win more than us. When I put up that chart and you see them ahead of that makes me angry. It does. I don't want to be beat by Germans or French or Americans or anyone for that matter. You heard that, and you're going to hear more of that. I hate losing. I want to win and win and win and win. And every time I lose, I lick my wounds and I say I'm going to win next time. And I never, ever, ever give up. I find a different way to go at this, a different target to look at, a different product to work with, a different partner to be with. And if I have a bad partnership, I just say, I don't go around bad-mouthing that partner. I just say, I'm never going to work with you again if it was that bad. Or I tell them straight up, look, this didn't work out. We can't work like this. This is not, and we heard that from MMM and Stantec yesterday, that this is good-natured, competitive market. And that's what it's supposed to be. But if you need to move on. You can't focus on the negative, you focus on the positive, right? So when we look at these models, and I like to focus on the World Bank where I have the most experience, having played a role as part of the task team, part of the tender team, part of the services to the client, and as a delivery agent, like as a consultant too, it makes it, I'm more capable of delivering services to you and recommendations. So the World Bank has a number of considerations that you need to look at when you look at the selection process. Number one, high quality services. So in a globally competitive market, you want the highest quality services. So when an MMM puts up the chart and shows all that stuff, you saw they have the highest quality services, and that's what they're offering. So you don't want to say we have like the third best services available in a tender. No, pick us because we're cheap. because that is not a good strategy. So high quality services. The balance between economy and efficiency. So that was the 80-20 or the 70-30. We can offer you, and we heard that from Stantec, although we don't say it exactly the same way. We go technologically appropriate services. So it's not that they can only fix it like old car in Cuba. It's like technologically appropriate services. So if someone doesn't have the electronic infrastructure to deliver education services, then we still need to put it in a book. We can't just offer it all electronically. So we need to offer a suite of services, if you will, that are within the range of the product availability, which means how much money is available to pay for that. We need to, with regard to the bank, give everyone the opportunity to compete. So when you look at the opportunity, you have to look at the evaluation grid. So as we heard, if you don't have what they want, then don't compete, because it's almost a guarantee for a loss. Like I said, it might be a lottery ticket, but I don't know. I only buy one lotto. Every time I need more money, I buy more lotto tickets. But it doesn't mean I'm going to win more lotteries, you know. So technically speaking, when we heard about the PhD, like I saw a really great opportunity for me personally. I wanted to apply. It said I only have a master's degree, and they want a PhD. I was like, X, move on. See you later. I didn't worry about it. X. I didn't even go out and look for someone else, because it was a one-off thing, and they needed a PhD, and it said PhD, 30 years in PhD. Okay, so you want an old timer, right? All right. Even older than me. Go ahead, find it. So the bank wants more consultants. The bank always wants more consultants, and they don't want to keep using. They want to spread the depth and range of services that can be offered by the consultants. They want innovation. There's a big emphasis on innovation, creativity, renewal, the use of national consultants. So when you look at the opportunities, typically, like this is the first thing when I speak about the ADB opportunities, we'll see it shows the national and the international. So typically, when you see the value of it, and let's say it says it's $100,000, and it has one international consultant for one person a month, and a dozen national consultants. Now you have to manage those people. You have to pay those people, and you have to wait to get reimbursed for those people. So those are the ones that I'm just like, you know, because really, I'm happy to work with them, but it's going to cost me a lot. Now, unless there's a building block for something else, then I'm not doing that. So you have to look at the break. Like there should be a fairly even break. And unless there's like the one that I just took a pass on, it had one international team leader who was responsible for everything. They had 10 months, and then there was like 28 national consultants, and it looked like a really great tender, but it was like, wow, that's a lot of work for one person. Like, holy, you had to do everything. You had to read every report, every single thing. And you had to verify every single thing. And you had to be in that country. And you had to submit everything. And you had to take care of it. Like, it's a lot of work. Unless you have a lot of time on your hands, it's very difficult for one person to do that. One single person. So usually there's a box at the top, and I'll be presenting that. And it'll say, overall responsibility. That's a really important box you want to look for. Who has overall responsibility? So if it has a national team leader with overall responsibility for all those national people, but if it has a single person up there and the international responsible for everything, it's a lot of responsibility. And of course, as we heard yesterday, transparency is a key. So, two portals here we're looking at. One for consultants, which is services, generally speaking, and you have to look at these guidelines. So all of the banks have these guidelines for selection and employment of consultants, and they have guidelines for procurement of goods, works, and non-consulting services. how many people in the room consider themselves consulting services? All right. How many people in the room are delivering goods? And this is very typical. This is that we see a equilibrium between the delivery of the goods and the works. But how many people's firms actually produce goods and services? Oh, okay. So everybody producing goods and services is doing this in this room, which is also unusual because a lot of people just, in some bigger firms, they just deliver the services and don't deliver the goods because Canadians have to get their stuff further. So we've always been trying in these workshops to encourage more participation in goods and works. But you'll see in the charts, we do very well in services because we have high quality products. So again, there's two ways of delivering these services. There's one portal which is focused on corporate procurement, and I'm going to take a little run at eConsult 2 in a minute. And there's another portal that is focused on operational procurement, which is the projects. Now, there is a significant amount of work available in corporate procurement by eConsult 2. Is there anyone who's been successful in the room who's secured a eConsult 2 contract? Oh, another Pathfinder. Agri team, this table has the Pathfinders. And of course, there's subcontracting or partnering, which is one of my absolute favorite ways because someone else is holding the bag, I'm collecting my money, and they're totally responsible for everything, right? And they're holding all the risk. There is huge value in that. There is absolutely very little risk to you. There's less emphasis now on control because you're not in control of anything on these things. The client's in control, so really, of course, there's the fourth one, which I don't really talk about, which is the smaller one, the sponsors by ISC or MEGA. So let's have a look at eConsult 2. I'm just going to step away and point you to the manual. So in your book, there's a little manual that we put together here in the workbook. It's a little bit easier to see this if you look at that. So if you look at eConsult 2, you'll see that it's an electronic format, and I believe starts on page 10. So if you register for eConsult 2, and this part of the workbook that I put in there explains to you with the link exactly how to do it. So I would strongly encourage you to register for eConsult 2. You get opportunities sent to you by email. It has a really good help menu to navigate this. You don't get overwhelmed in paper because it's principally electronic. And you get identification of who wins. So selection notifications are an important way to identify potential partners for you. So if you're looking for someone who has won before in a sector that you're interested in and has successfully navigated eConsult 2, then you register, you log in there, and you find out who won. And just you basically follow the breadcrumbs that way. So these are also posted on DG Markets, UNDB, and a few other places like DevX. We used to spend a lot of time on the value of DG Market or the UNDB or DevX, but all of these services are generally offering kind of overlap of the same information. So I always encourage people like the social media experts, you focus on one approach and learn it really well and harness the tools that are available that way. So in the workbook there, I clicked on, and here are some opportunities. Like these are a bit older here, But if you look, this is the way that it appears on
Page
13, sorry. Anyone who feels the urge to help me, please. I only have so much room on this podium. So you can see the way that it's sorted to go through there. So, and I'm sure when people look at it, they go, oh, hey, that's really interesting. Almost all of the time that I look on there, I see something. I see some opportunity, you know? So really, I think it's quite useful to go in there and look at it, just for the purposes of making you comfortable with the system, identifying what's going on, and quite often, if the bank is investing in these areas via corporate procurement, then it tells you something about what's happening in that country. The bank itself is taking the initiative. This is a corporate procurement portal. So I won't spend too much time on that because it is something that you have to go through yourself. You know, you have to kind of figure it out by navigating it, by learning it, by using it for your own. Sorry. By using it, and first of all, by registering. If you do not register, you can't. So Michael's going to help me out.
Well, I just want to make a quick point about the registration. So, if you register as an individual consultant, you can't compete for firm opportunities. But if you register as a firm, you can compete for individual consultant opportunities. That's the first point. The second is the World Bank Corporate Procurement are launching a new e-tender platform which is going live in July. And that will have opportunities on it for corporate World Bank corporate opportunities. So there are two paths in there. One is for corporate opportunities, providing services directly to the World Bank, and the other is a portal for operational consulting services. So eConsult 2 will still continue for the operational consulting opportunities, and the World Bank e-tender platform from July will have corporate procurement opportunities, and that's all electronic. So the documents are electronic, submission is electronic, unlike
And that, thank you. That is very, very good point too. When things start, those are fresh starts. Fresh start's a great time to get involved, you know? Like, oh, I've been involved with this from the beginning. Like, can't export. It's really, really good. I mean, these are good things to get involved with at the beginning because it's not like you have to get up to speed. It's like you're learning with everyone else. So the playing field is fairly level that way. So I'm certainly going to look into. I've already learned 2 things, and I love what we heard yesterday. If I learned one thing out of a workshop, I think there's a tremendous amount of value in this. I don't understand why we don't capture that idea more. And in international competitive bidding, you need to learn that one thing. That one thing is the difference between winning and losing, you know? So I wanted to talk just briefly for a minute about how there are all these other opportunities out there. We had an interesting conversation last night about there are all these opportunities in Canada through global affairs that we don't know about. And I spoke to the Director General of Contributions and Grants before I left, and I was like, we should be going out there and we should be telling Canadian firms and organizations about these opportunities that you have. Every day I learn more about it, and I spend my days studying this stuff so I can use it. But I'm still learning, and I asked him, I go, no one told us. No one shared this. Why are you burying it? Like, why isn't this information out there? It's 40% of the allocation now. 40% of the Canadian allocation, probably closer to 50 or 60 in truth, goes to the multilateral funds. That means that these are opportunities that if you don't pursue, you're not getting to pursue them. You're not even in the game. So I put one up here. This is the Global Environment Facility. This facility has $14.5 billion in grants. Mobilized $75 billion in additional financing for 4,000 projects since 1992. Canada is one of the leading nations in innovation and sustainable development and taking this. But the problem is a lot of our firms are small. Like we just don't have the... This opportunity is a huge opportunity. There's a chart I put in the workbook there, and it shows how big some of these projects are. What page is that?
16.
On page 16, you'll see. And some of these are usually co-financed by the country. Some of these are huge. The bank manages this facility and acts as the trustee for it. So when you see the range of partners on this, which includes every single development bank, by the way, every local development bank, country development bank, regional development bank, UN organization, it is just a massive facility. There are a number of these facilities. There used to be a lot of trust funds in Canada that Canada supported the various banks. We still have a number of facilities out there, and I'll mention a couple of them. This is managed by the bank. Traditionally, they're managed by the bank, but you can see the range of some of these projects are just incredibly large, you know, and they're diversified and complex, and usually there's a small opportunity for you in there if you're working in that sector. I'll point out another one. The Extractive Industry Technical Advisory Facility. Now, I've gotten to know this facility by working with a number of engineering firms that are offering consulting services in the extractive industry. Now, this technical advisory facility, Canada is the largest contributor to it. And a couple of firms that I've been advising on, I mentioned this to them, and they're like, what? We never even heard about it. And these are people who are experts in the sector. The information was not, it's not up to anybody to provide you with this information. You have to find it yourself. And the only reason I stumbled upon it was because I had supported the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in developing the sustainable development project for Latin America, which was a regional program that they submitted to Global Affairs and got funded. And it works on CSR in the extractive industry. So this technical advisory facility works like most of them, that helps them develop policies, governance, and a range of other things, and supports global knowledge products. So if you're a consultant and you work in the extractive sector and you have a focus on a specific country, in this case, let's just say Colombia or Peru or Chile, this is technical assistance. This is the kinds of services that you offer. And if you look at the distribution of the contribution to this facility, 43% of the contribution comes from Canada. So in terms of participation ratio in the facility, I can tell you our participation ratio is under 10%. Just because I dug in on it and I had a look. And then I started to point, as the advisors are wont to point, to other firms. Hey, I'm pointing this to you guys, okay? You guys should have a closer look at this. And once you have a closer look at this, you're gonna have a closer look at a bunch more. These are grants, which means you get paid, you know, on a grant. There's a big difference between a grant and a loan. Our company focuses mostly on grants, because with grants, a lot of them are administered by the bank and you get paid by the bank. especially with ADB, administers TA, for example, you get paid by ADB. I like getting paid by the bank. I hate chasing the client for my money. It involves like diplomacy and charisma and charm and, you know, hey, can I have my money, please? You know, like, it's a lot harder than, here is my invoice, can I get paid now, please? Which is like, here is your payment, which is very nice, you know, which is typically the way we like to work. So I would be remiss not to point out to you that there are a number of these facilities that you, the glorious taxpayers of Canada, have contributed towards and are being accessed by many of your global friends out there right now. And it is done for the benefit of the country, by the way. And our country does make significant contributions to these facilities for one purpose only, and that is to disperse the allocation of funds that are in the envelope allocated for the fiscal year within the paradigm of their strategy that they have developed. And as I spoke to the Director General and asked him why there are not RFPs and opportunities for Canadian companies, he said they don't have the human resources to prepare the RFPs. So they don't have the staff to prepare the RFPs, so funds are being bundled out more quickly than you could ever imagine into facilities and contributions. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing, I'm just saying this is what's happening right now. Now, the more people who they have to plan, and they may take a different direction. But the previous government, this is how they operated, and these are the facilities that they set up, and they are in existence. So if you do a quick inventory, you'll find probably one of these things for your sector. How many people work in extractive here? Okay. How many people work in climate change? See, there's recently been $250 million allocated for that. How many? Yes, sir.
So, so practically, how would a Canadian company, access these funds if they've been giving, for example, to this facility? Would it be incumbent on the Canadian company to write a proposal to this facility and say, I'm able to do this type of work?
Thank you for asking that. So this is how you do it. Let's say you're working in Chile. You go to Chile. You talk to the government. You have a relationship with Chile. And you say, hey, we could really help you with this. And they're like, how are you going to pay for that? And you go, well, there's the facility, so I'll write up this proposal and you submit it to the facility. Chile, the government of Chile submits it and says they want to hire you. And there's a number of facilities, and they basically all operate like this. You write a proposal for the government, you give it to the government, and they submit it. And like each facility has a different protocol. I would hesitate to say that there's a different approach, a common approach for each one of them, but there is. You have to learn about the facility. Like I read the annual report for this facility. I put it on didn't I put it on? It's on the USP. Yeah, it's on your USP. I put the annual report. So the report goes to the donors. And in that report is a list of all the projects and the ones in the pipeline.
But usually, the facility requires a competitive selection process for the winning company. So it's very rare that sole selection in the facilities that I've been involved with is allowed. So it's also knowing what the country has in their pipeline and what is in the pipeline of the facility and bidding on it.
Yeah, thank you. And that's the annual report in USB has those pipeline by country in there. And I think that is more common than the other approach. The one approach where you're preparing for small ones, I've seen a lot of those. I've won one like that, a small one. It was for 50,000 or something. There's usually a level of procurement that it has to meet. There's a threshold. I think some it's 25, some it's 50, some it's 100. I think each one has their own paradigm. You have to really examine it. I wouldn't paint them all, but the one that we put on the USB, I'd encourage you to study because I know that there is an interest in this part of the country in that sector and in this area. And I certainly do. Once I learned about this facility and the engineering firms that I spoke to about this, they're very interested in it because it does offer a really good opportunity to get involved too. And if you don't have involvement, this is one way to get involved, is to go in through this, which is a lot easier than competing on like a project loan bid or something like that. So, where do you fit? I was talking to Michael this morning about this. Where do we fit as consultants, as service providers, as deliverers of goods and services? Well, there's a point along the continuum where we all have opportunities. Some people in universities, they're very good at studies and research, and that's one opportunity. Near the top, as we go down the cycle, ID and preparation and appraisal, there's all sorts of opportunities, but usually just for single individuals. And then when we move down to implementation, supervision, and the implementation and completion, I'm also a performance specialist, so I do a lot of reporting, results-based management stuff, final reports, midterm evaluations. Those are opportunities that happen in terms of the end of the continuum as well. So the bulk of the opportunities occur during implementation, which naturally, so to speak, is where the money is. So along the continuum of the cycle, you see, and there's this description of it right here, shows in greater detail what happens. So around number 6, implementation and supervision, the borrower implements the project, and the bank oversees it. And as we heard yesterday, the part about implementation is where the opportunities get issued, the tenders get issued. So there's a useful way to
Yeah, quick question on this cycle. The World Bank indicates that they're doing a proposal, a PPP, a project proposal plan.
okay.
A procurement proposal.
Procurement,
plan.
yeah.
Yeah, the PPP. Anyway, when you establish a project procurement plan, when do you establish that procurement plan? The idea for how to put together the project. When do you do that? In the pipeline phase, past the pipeline phase?
Yeah, so in phase 3 up there, during project preparation, there is the sector specialists and the procurement people take the business case that was prepared. We call it a project concept note, and that's.
Excuse me, could you speak up a little?
Sorry. So during project preparation, which is noted as part 3 of the project cycle up there, the bank staff work with the borrower clients to prepare a project appraisal document. So in that project appraisal document, the sector specialists contribute, the procurement, the financial management, the safeguards specialists all contribute to identify risks and issues that need to be managed through the project. So from a procurement point of view, the procurement specialist works with the borrower counterpart to prepare a procurement strategy. So in that procurement strategy, that procurement strategy needs to be complete prior to the loan being agreed with the bank, right? So that it is clear when the loan is agreed between the borrower and the bank, what elements are to be procured and the methods that are going to be used. Right, so that summary is called a procurement plan. It's essentially a spreadsheet with the actions or the activities within a project listed out. All of the individual things that are going to be taken to market are listed out with their value, the risk assessment that's been done by the bank, and the methods that are going to be used to take that contract to market. So in order to prepare that procurement plan, we're now requiring that for every project there is sufficient research and analysis that goes into understanding the operational context of the project, the market conditions, the ability and willingness of suppliers to bid on the project, the capability of the client to implement and what support they might need. And each of those areas will present risks and opportunities that need to be managed through the procurement. And the idea is that the borrower client and the World Bank procurement specialist tailor the approach for each of the contracts that are to be taken to market to suit the specific situation and the thing that they're buying. So if, for example, they're buying high voltage direct current works, then the market for those works is very narrow. There's a couple of main suppliers and that's it. So you would tailor your approach based on those market conditions. Okay, so and all of that is summarised in the procurement plan, which essentially becomes part of the loan agreement. It's part of the legal documents.
Is that done by the country specialist or in conjunction with the borrower client, or is it done more centrally, or does it depend?
It's done on the ground in the country office. The procurement strategy is a document that's owned by the borrowers. It's their procurement. It's upon them to undertake the market research and analysis and to justify the positions and the approaches that they're going to take. However, that needs to then be approved by the bank, right? And then a summary of the approaches and the risks and opportunities that have been identified is summarised and put into the project appraisal document, which is then presented to the board to be approved for so the project can proceed. Is that- Were there any other questions on that? So we expect, particularly initially, since this is a new requirement, although it is currently a requirement as well, but there's more emphasis on this upfront planning now to try and avoid some of the issues that we're typically seeing on these projects. The capability on the ground and the experience in preparing these strategies will need to be developed over time, and there will be an expectation that our staff provide support to clients to prepare these strategies and do the analysis. And the bank has a mountain of data and historical information on projects that they can bring to bear on that research and analysis. Things that are typically going wrong around exchange rate fluctuations, or what's preventing suppliers bidding on projects, or the track record of certain agencies making payments on time. You know, there's a huge amount of information within the bank that can be used to mitigate the risks in projects going forward. And so we expect our staff will help bring that to the table. Sorry, Linda.
So just building on a useful way to do this, you know, it's good to have a strategy. And as we learned from Raybon, the Government of Canada will give us some financial support to develop a strategy through the Can Export program, right? Like, this might be something to integrate into your thinking. And I mean, like, you have to kind of be quick on your feet when you do these things, right? Like, when you receive information that is of strategic support, like we just heard about the way procurement is done. I mean, if it's changing, you have to really pay attention to how quickly they implement the changes too. So you focus first on your expertise in the region and your particular qualifications. Understand what the background information is. So if you look right at the bottom of this, down from 2 is all of these key documents. And of course, it starts with the country partnership strategy and framework. Now, I always find it useful once I zero in on a country to then go to the USAID website. They have very good country strategies. I take their country strategy and I read it right away. And the level of detail in there is incredible. And USAID has, global grants available that we can apply for. Like they have an open portal for sole source funding for us. And in the last year, I've really started to focus more on USAID opportunities registered with their SAM database and their financing system, gotten my firm in a position to advise other companies on how to work the USAID system and be involved. Been shortlisted as the number 2 on 2 bids as myself personally on their USA loans, grants. Their country strategies are done in such great detail, and in terms of what I was focused on Africa, their Feed the Future strategy, their linkages between their layers of strategy in terms of this are all critical production. Their Power Africa strategy has $2 billion allocated for it. And if you're involved in coastal resilience, water, climate change, agriculture production, food, these strategies provide a wealth of information. Then I am now in position to compare it to the Canadian strategy and the World Bank strategy, as well as the other strategies. So now I have a pretty good understanding about what's going on in the country and the breakdown of it. Now, once I know, of course, what's going on in the country and the sector, I can then zero in on a particular project. So the project information document or the project appraisal document, more importantly, has at the beginning of it a list of the personnel who are involved in the project. Those people are the people with the information who put together the loan or the grant. They're the key people. They know the country, they know the client, they know all about it, and as long as you're permitted to speak to them, if it's permitted, you have to be very careful about this. You don't want to cross any boundaries. First of all, you have to say, is it okay if I talk to you? Like once you get the waiver that it's okay to talk to them, it's really helpful. And then of course you look at the project and active project, the pipeline and active project database. So I've just been cycling around some documents that came from the various banks, their little booklets and things like that. I mean, a lot of these things, they don't print anymore. You can download them. So these are probably some of the last available print copies that, unless you went to the place and picked them up, and like physical documents are really hard to get. But they all are available electronically. So again, I like to spend a bit of time on this so people understand where they fit. Like where you fit and who does what and what you need and how it works and what is the opportunity. Because as fascinating as the subject matter is, I think that's kind of why we're all here, is where's the opportunity. It's like when I go fishing, I love fishing. I'm always looking for the sweet spot. Where's the sweet spot? Well, usually, it's on where there's a dip, where there's a drop, where there's a range, where there's a current. And it's not where there's a bunch of other guys with their fishing pole, all right? That is not the place that I typically pull my boat up beside, because they'll throw stuff at me or scowl at me or get really mad or whatever, especially if I pull up and I catch a giant fish when they've been sitting there for 2 hours. So most of these opportunities, as an individual, if you're really good, you'll usually be able to find an opportunity. Like individual opportunities are available out there. And individuals can really, really help people. One of my particular levels of expertise is in conflict and post-conflict areas. My track record of Gaza, Bosnia, and so on, post-Civil War has really helped me develop a particular nuanced approach to dealing with people, and obviously never talking politics when you arrive after a civil war. So it doesn't. Some other people, they're not really suited for that climate, right? So to go in there, usually even the people that I'm usually working with, I'm usually the only one going. It's not for everyone, you know. It's a much more challenging and stressful environment. So, where you fit, you'll see. So these acronyms, I'll say because I'm not sure whether we put a lexicon in there, but MOS at the top is a monthly operational summary. So a monthly operational summary is typically produced, and it's produced by the bank. So, project preparation documents involve the banks and the borrower, and they're in a monthly operational summary or a project information document. A project information document is typically thin. It doesn't have as much information as a project appraisal document, which is much more substantial. So as you go down the line and then sort of, I guess, culminating right before evaluation, the opportunities grow. They get bigger. They start out smaller and they get bigger. So at appraisal, you'll see a series of documents coming up. You'll see a PAD, you'll see a staff appraisal report, you'll see the proposal documents which go to the board for approval. And once it's approved by the banks, you'll see a GPN, which is a general procurement notice, which just says this loan is now available and there's going to be opportunities. And usually that's when we as service providers start tracking on approval. But you know, if you're really, really, really focused on a particular sector and a particular country, you're looking at it, you know, well, it's up for board approval. You know, it's hard to look at things before they've been approved because things do get rejected from time to time. You know, it's not like necessarily, the board doesn't just really rubber stamp stuff. And then, of course, the greatest opportunities come when these SPN, a specific procurement notice, a request for a proposal, or a MCAN. So I think I'll just skip on by the next slide, which is the roles and responsibilities of everybody. But I will just say, I don't think we spend enough time talking about, you know, going to the location of the bank, visiting your office of liaison of IFI and the executive director office. So the executive director knows quite a bit about what's going on at those banks. And if you're properly organized, and I know that Shane and his team could probably talk about these missions that they run to the OLIFIs, are they very useful for your team and the people who go with them?
They are. Once you're prepared and you know exactly what you're going to be asking. I think preparation is going to be key when you have those meetings as well.
So, and I know you're planning one and you just did one, right?
Yeah.
So those people, are there people in the room who went on that? Oh, well, you guys don't count. So when the next time you get an email from Shane or someone on his team talking about that, or Christian, then you should have a look at the agenda and what they're trying to do, because usually they're a reference point. And I know I come across them from time to time, and the guys I'm working with at Memorial, they mentioned to me, we were just on a mission to the ADB, they said, and they went with a team, and it was, and the director at Marine Institute, he said, yeah, it was very useful. We had some that said X and this meeting, and these are the things they want to follow up on. And when you go, they remember you went. They remember you were there. And if you write a note and follow up and say, thank you. And once I started working with Memorial, I wrote notes to them, you could probably tell that's the kind of person I am. I go, hey, remember when you met Bill on March 19 or 2000, and hey, we're following up on this. And we want to know more, and they help you. So these are part of that support mechanism Raymond was speaking of. And you do need a local partner. You do need a local partner over and over again. We'll continue to all emphasize that point. You can fly in from wherever you're from, land there with the world on your shoulders and try to do everything yourself. But with a local partner, as we heard from Gita yesterday, you've got help. You've got somebody who can help you drive. Hey, where's that road? Right? Like, hey, where's that? Where does Where should I not go? Who is a notoriously corrupt person that might get me blacklisted and my firm forever? You know, like there are those things. How important is language? Like, we just went on a mission to Mozambique, and not one of us spoke Portuguese. I mean, I'm kind of okay. We know more Spanish than Portuguese, but our partner, which was the government, I wrote them before we went. We go, we expect you to go with us and provide someone to help us to translate for this, to communicate to the community, to talk. And they did, and they were invaluable. And then when we went up north, where there's only one road and sometimes it ends, then we had 3 people there helping us. And then, you know, all of a sudden, we're a fairly large team of 8 people and 2 vehicles. And this is a real partnership. The more we dug in, the more people that got involved, this became like a momentum thing, right? So it wasn't just, you know, me or 3 guys or 4 people or this. It was like, here's a team moving down the road, gathering momentum, grouping together more people who wanted to work. And then all of a sudden, it just kept growing and growing and turning into something really, really good. And when something turns into really, really good, then all the pieces start to line up. They start to work together. So there is a list of local firms. And the sample RFP that I passed around, you can see some bidders are shortlisted with local partners, some are not. When I see stuff like that, I always say, oh, sometimes they don't put the local firm on there because the person who submitted the EOI didn't include them in the list. It's the way you list it. You can bury it if you want to. And some people don't get exclusivity, so your local partner can sign with more than one. And then, as we heard yesterday, you know, it's not, it kind of removes the value of having that local partner. If we had one local partner on one bid, they signed with everybody on the list. They won. They won. They were the winners. They won more than anybody. And then you can bet every time after that they won. They won and won and won and won. I wanted a job with those guys after that, you know, like. And again, we're going to come back to this idea of development. Development. We're all about development. This new development paradigm is the Sustainable Development Goals. So these 17 goals were aimed at addressing everything by 2030. Now, the reason there's so many is they couldn't get it down to 10 or 15 or something manageable. So it's 17. When you roll over these on the SDG site, I think in the workbook on page 17, you can see this a little bit better. It pops up. There's a separate page for each one of them. And, you know, I whenever I write a proposal, I always address that in the proposal. I address some part of it, some portion of it. I mean, I think that when we look at the importance of clean water and sanitation, it's you know, if you don't have water, I learned this in northern Mozambique. If you don't have water, you're not going to live very long. You know, if you don't have sanitation, you're going to be sick. I mean, these are things that we can help address. You know, these are really, really important things. If you don't have decent work and economic growth, you're going to have war and conflict and trials and tribulation. You know, you don't have a safe climate, you're not going to survive. You know, we live in a world where all of these great challenges need to be addressed, and there is a niche there for all of us to contribute to addressing it. So this is the overreaching paradigm of all of the lending and grants and actions now are those SDGs. So if you go to the SDG site and you roll over it, you click on one of these things, you'll get a whole nother portal pops up. So I really encourage you, if you haven't gone there, go there. I'm just going to do a little bit more, then we're going to take a break, okay? What is the methodology for selection? And we heard a lot about this. So you have QCBS, which is typically used. Actually, why don't we take our break now?